Max Scherzer heading to the Blue Jays. I feel like I've said this every single time we have brought this up. But the first time this came up, I'm thinking to myself, really, is Scherzer actually going to go to the Blue Jays, right? The Blue Jays, they've had this weird off season where, it felt like everything has just been a struggle up to this point. The Vlad extension talks, who knows what's going on with that? You weren't getting a whole lot of good news on that just a couple of weeks ago. Santander, he was still on the board, right? They did land Jeff Hoffman, but then you started getting some reports about the medicals, with the Orioles and the Braves and how it didn't look all that great. They were worried about him. And, so it felt like the Blue Jays just couldn't really get just any good news, it felt like. But it feels like the tides are turning a little bit for the Blue Jays here. We're getting more good news for the Blue Jays as of late. And now Max Scherzer is heading to Toronto. And like I was saying, a couple of weeks ago, or a week and a half, whatever it was, when this first came up, I'm thinking, is he going to want to go there? Obviously Max Scherzer, one of the best pitchers of all time, getting towards the end of his career, probably wants to go somewhere where he knows he has a good shot of winning a championship. And, unfortunately with the Blue Jays, like I said, not really a whole lot of good news. But they've been getting more good news as of late. You got Santander in the fold. Who knows? Maybe something could progress with Vlad over the next couple of weeks, right? There is, I guess, a self-imposed deadline, spring training. Let's see if they can work something out. We'll see. But when it comes to this signing, I think we all have to remember here, when it comes to Max Scherzer, yes, the name is very strong with Max Scherzer. Obviously, one of the best pitchers of all time. You have to remember, though, right? And I'm not trying to rain on the Blue Jays parade. That's not what I'm trying to do. You're probably thinking, oh, Robbie's just, Red Sox fan. His team's not spending money like us. He's just bitter. He's just being biased. He doesn't want to give the Blue Jays any credit. I'm just being realistic, okay? Scherzer, 40 years old now, has had some injuries. I think, yes, the signing, it's good, right? It's going to have a lot of positives here. If he can pitch over a full year, if they can monitor those innings and get him through a full season, without any, what's the word I'm looking for? Any downsides, any injuries and whatnot, then that would be amazing, right? But what he's going to bring to this team, they already did have a few good veterans here leading the way, guys like Kevin Gausman, George Springer, right? But adding another veteran like this in the fold, it can't hurt, right? Especially for a team looking to get back into playoff contention. Scherzer's a gamer. He wants to go out there and win. This is only going to push the team a little bit further here. And, when you take a look at this Blue Jays team, honestly, when I'm looking at it, I'm starting to, kind of like it, especially compared to what it was last year. Andres Jimenez, I feel like that could be a move by the end of the offseason that goes a little bit under the radar. I like Andres Jimenez. No, he's not going to be Barry Bonds by any means, but he's going to give you a very good defensive player in that lineup. A guy that's going to really lock it down out there in the middle infield. You know what you're going to be getting with Vlad. Santander is going to give you some power there. He's going to give him some good protection. That's going to make that lineup harder to navigate in the middle of that order. You are going to need more production from Bo Bichette and George Springer. I think those two guys are big X factors for the Blue Jays this year. I think George Springer, you could say, what's the word I'm looking for? I would say fascinating. I find him to be fascinating, right? Because this is a guy, when they signed him a few years ago, you're thinking, all right, George Springer, man, this guy, he's going to lead us to the promised land. And now the last couple of years, the bat just hasn't really been the same. I think this is a big year for him. I know he's 35 now, but if you can just get some more out of him, that is only going to help this lineup. Bo Bichette, his year this past year, basically non-existent, right? You can just basically say 2024 was a wash for Bo. But if he can get back on track, this lineup has a lot of potential. Now, I see you in the chat. Focal, Venny, The Blue Jays need one more big bat, probably another lefty in the pen. And Benny, you're saying Jays need a big bat. Sounds like Pete Alonso to me. Now, we'll talk about Pete Alonso in just a second. Now, could they be done? I don't think they are, to be honest. And if I'm just guessing, I don't know. I don't know anyone in that front office, but they've been making a lot of moves. It's like, why stop now? Why? If you're going to go out there and be aggressive like you've been, why stop? Keep going. Go see if you can land Pete Alonso here. I think that would be phenomenal. If they could do that, ooh, this is looking all of a sudden, pretty scary. Pretty scary. We had a super chat coming in. $1.99. Calling ice to Dodger Fan Fest to kick the EBT. My friend, we cannot be. No, we're not talking about that here. We're talking baseball here. We're talking Blue Jays, my friend. We're talking Blue Jays. Thank you for the super chat, though. But back to the Blue Jays. Right now, the way I see this team, based off of the additions they've made, I see maybe around like an 85, 86 win team. Is that fair? I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe Blue Jays fans disagree with me. Maybe, whoever else out there maybe disagrees with me. I feel like I'm looking at an 85 win team. It's kind of where I'm at. If everything goes right, that's where I'm at right now. Now, if they were able to add someone like Pete Alonso, I feel like you could probably look towards, closer to 90, 87, 88 wins. I think that's pretty realistic. I would say right now, at least 85 wins, at least, should be attainable for this Blue Jays team. We'll see. I like the move. Obviously, there's question marks with Scherzer. You're not quite sure what you're going to get out of him, over the last couple of years. Going back to 2023, winning a championship with the Rangers, it felt like he was just struggling to get through, to the end of that postseason. Still, the numbers with him have not been bad over the last couple of years. ERA still under a 4, FIP in the low 4s. Good strikeout rate back in 23. The strikeouts did come down this past year. The home runs have been up. So he's going to have to work on, not leaving stuff just hanging over the plate and getting mashed. But, let's see. Scherzer is going to be motivated. He's going to go out there and he's going to want to compete. So hopefully the fact that he got some starts under his belt this past year, normal offseason, normal spring training, let's see, maybe he could, end up getting 25 to 30 starts. If he can, that's going to be a big lift for this Blue Jays team, not just on the field, but off the field as well, right? Where I think he's just going to bring a good mentality to that clubhouse, a team looking to get back into contention. And now, I will say, getting back to Vlad, if they could get Vlad signed up to an extension, that's looking all of a sudden like a great offseason. Very good offseason. I mean, right now, you got to give the Blue Jays a lot of credit, right? Swinging and missing, going back to last offseason. Shohei Ohtani in the plane. They're getting a lot of wins. It feels like they have momentum right now. I'm thinking right now for the Blue Jays, if I were to give them a grade, if their offseason was done now, I would say at least a solid B. B+. I think that's kind of where I'm at with the Blue Jays. That they've turned a lot of lemons here into some pretty decent lemonade. It's a good-looking team, I think. They're going to have to execute on the field. They're going to have to stay healthy. You do have those question marks, just like every other team, right? But you do have more question marks with the Blue Jays, with Bo having the down year this past year. Obviously, Scherzer, like I've mentioned. George Springer, can he start getting a bit more productive there? We'll see here. But the Blue Jays, I like it. Can't hate this move. $15.5 million, a little bit more than Justin Verlander. Hey, that's just, what Charlie Morton got to. I think it's a fair deal. I like the move. Good for the Blue Jays. Now, can they add one more guy? Getting back to Pete Alonso here. Listen, I don't know. This one was interesting. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is just leverage. When I read this, John Heyman, The Reds could develop as a dark horse Pete Alonso landing spot. Dude, I mean, come on, man. Like, this has to be leverage. Come on. Like, really? But then again, I also wonder, too. It's like, the more this drags on, the more this kind of just keeps going, and he's on the market. And you think to yourself, right? Like Jordan Montgomery last offseason. Who saw the Diamondbacks landing him? They came out of nowhere, just like they did with Corbin Burns, right? That's why I thought, Corbin Burns, could the Diamondbacks come out and get him? And they did. Could this be a similar situation where the longer he hangs on the market and just a random team pops up? Well, John Heyman, putting here, could the Reds pursue Pete Alonso? It's probably a long shot, but with Alonso's market not developing as expected, word is Cincy may consider it. I don't know. Is this leverage? Smells like leverage, if you ask me. You can never trust John Heyman when it comes to the Scott Boras clients. It just smells like, someone from the Boras Corporation called Heyman. Hey, listen, just go put it out there that the Reds are maybe interested. You know what I mean? It's like, I could honestly see someone in the Cincinnati front office, like that meme of the guy sitting on his couch drinking a beer. He's so funny. I forget his name, but he's just like pointing at himself like, me? Like, I honestly, I kind of wonder if that's the reaction from the Reds front office. You know what I mean? They're like, what? We haven't even talked about Pete Alonso. Like, you know what I mean? Like, could this just be something out of thin air? But whatever. I'm going to dive into it since it was brought up. It's something to talk about. You could make it work. I find the fit a little odd because you already have guys like Christian Encarnacion, Strand, who's going to be looking for playing time. Now, you could put Pete at first base, Spencer Steer, put him out in, I would guess, right, and Jake Fraley can be a lefty bat off the bench. You could make it work, but they got a lot of position players here that are looking for playing time. So, I don't know. I would love it. I think the Reds do need some power in that lineup. I think they need a bat here. Again, is this leverage? Kind of feels like it. It feels like something's just being thrown out there just to try and get this market moving, get the Mets to panic a little bit, offer up a little bit more money. Could it be that? I think it's possible. But then again, we've seen weirder things happen in the past. So I don't know. Moving on here. Jorge Polanco heading back to the Seattle Mariners. Ken Rosenthal reporting that Polanco is guaranteed $7.75 million, including a $750,000 option buyout. That suggests he'll have a $7 million base salary, just a one-year deal, according to Ryan Divish of the Seattle Times. For Seattle, I got to say here, Seattle, I mean, disappointing offseason. Very disappointing offseason, if you ask me. Listen, Jorge Polanco, fine. All right, you bring him back, right? Obviously, it didn't really work out this past year. He had a lot of issues staying on the field. I mean, he had, running into a lot of injuries. Only hit .213, had a 92 WRC plus. He hit for a little bit of pop, 16 homers. Something wasn't right, so I guess you could kind of give him a mulligan a little bit. But then again, he's been, having a lot of injuries over the last few years here, going back to 2022. So it's like, how many more mulligans are you going to give him? It's just disappointing. I think Seattle, they have easily had one of the more disappointing off seasons. I think you could say they've had the most disappointing off season. I mean, is that wrong to say? Is that a hot take? I mean, really, what have they done? I mean, you've added. I mean, really, like, honestly, you brought in Neftali Feliz, but I mean, whatever, they haven't done anything. I mean, nothing. I mean, you brought in Fujinami on the minor league deal. Solano, sorry. I was thinking they did something and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Sure. Solano, I guess. It's fine. But I don't know, man. It's just very strange to me that they needed, in my opinion, to add a bit more thump to the middle of the order. Now, maybe they think internally where they feel like the coaching change, the manager change is going to be what puts them in motion. Could that be the thinking where they feel like they don't necessarily need to go out there and go, make any big moves? Maybe they feel like they do have talent. When you look at the lineup, yes, you have guys that are capable of doing some good things, right? J-Rod, obviously, we know how good this guy can be. Victor Robles, he came to Seattle and he was setting the world on fire. You would like for Mitch Haniger, Mitch Garver to do a bit more, kind of pick that up a little bit. Obviously you brought in Randy Rosarena before the deadline. Got Riley there. There are names here. J.P. Crawford, he missed a lot of time this past year. He had a struggle this past year. So, they have guys that are more than capable. And they did play a little better after they made the manager change. You brought in Edgar Martinez. So let's see if maybe internally they feel like they're going to be they're in a better place. But you still would have liked to have seen a little bit more instead of Jorge Polanco and Donovan Solano. It would have been really nice if they made a move for Pete Alonso or go get a third baseman like Alex Bregman. Make a big move. Would have been nice for Seattle, especially with all this pitching that they have. I feel like they've had a very disappointing offseason. I'm not trying to make Mariners fans upset. I'm not trying to rain on the parade. But, Jorge Polanco, I'm thinking in the beginning of the offseason, there's no way this guy goes back. After the down year, they declined the player option. Or they declined the club option, sorry. I don't know. And now you just bring him back on a cheaper deal. It just feels a little underwhelming, if you ask me. Now, what could this mean? Speaking of Alex Bregman, what could this mean for Alex Bregman? I got to think here with Bregman. The Astros, according to Chandler Rome, we already talked about this a couple of days ago. The Astros seriously pursued Jorge Polanco with plans to play him primarily at second base and move Jose Altuve to left field. Attention now turns toward Alex Bregman. I was told, don't be surprised if Bregman is still on the market once spring training is underway. I feel like you're not hearing anything on that front. I feel like there were a couple of reports today that nothing is happening with that. I think in the end now that, a team like the Astros who were looking at Jorge Polanco, according to the reports, now that their backup option is, off the market, you got to think that you got to figure something out with Bregman at this point. Unless he just surprises everybody and just ends up taking a short-term deal. Maybe he could take a short deal with the Cubs, maybe the Red Sox, the Tigers, have some kind of an offer. All of a sudden, hey, you got Max Scherzer in Toronto now. I don't know. I keep seeing that, someone putting a report out there saying that there's a team that has a big offer for Bregman, but it's unknown who the team is. That team has to be the Blue Jays. In my opinion, I could be dead wrong. I usually am. But I'm thinking that's probably got to be the Blue Jays. I don't know. But, obviously the Astros have their offer on the table. He has a multiple 5+ year offers on the table as well. I think with Jose Altuve saying out loud that he'd be willing to move to left field, I just feel like the stars are aligning for the Astros at this point, and they just got to add a little bit more money. That's really what it feels like to me. Bregman, I think back to Houston, it feels inevitable, but then again, if he feels like he's taking too much of an AAV pay cut, which I think is kind of ridiculous at this point, if you feel like there's a possibility where you could go the Matt Chapman route, you take a high AAV, opt out, go back out on the market next offseason, and then go or try to work out an extension with wherever you go, then maybe that could end up working out. I think based off of the regression of the metrics, that's what I think is kind of scaring off teams. Not scaring them off, but they're not willing to go that extra mile for him. So maybe he could end up taking that Chapman route where he gets that 3-year deal. Remember Luke Chapman, before he signed that deal with the Giants last offseason, his numbers weren't amazing by any means. They were good. Let's actually pull them up here. Matt Chapman. So remember, he had that 1 year or the couple of years in Toronto in 23. Remember, he got off to the good start, and then he cooled off. Right, he hit 240, a 330 on base, 424 slugging, a 110 WRC plus, 17 homers. So teams are thinking, yeah, you're a solid third baseman, but is this a player that we really want to be giving a long-term deal for? But then he went to San Francisco. He took the short deal, and he ended up having a great year. I mean, a 121 WRC plus, 463 on the slugging, 27 homers, 15 stolen bases, good defense. The Giants said, all right, we've seen enough. Let's do an extension. Let's get this done. So maybe that's sitting in the back of Bregman's mind a little bit, where he thinks maybe the same thing can happen to him. Maybe. I think the Astros, it feels like the stars are aligning, but then again, I'm going to hold out for the possibility that maybe he could just take a short-term deal, bet on himself, try again next year, or maybe try to work out an extension if he ends up having a good year. So we'll see. But the Astros, keep an eye out for them. We also had Red Sox legend Ryan Brazier getting DFA'd, which, it's kind of funny because you think of the Dodgers and you're thinking, man, this guy had some pretty good numbers this past year and he just got DFA'd. He's been very good for them ever since he went there, not a couple of years ago. And now he's getting DFA'd. I mean, that just shows how ridiculous the Dodgers pitching staff is right now, where they're like, man, we got to get rid of someone. I guess we got to get rid of Brazier. I mean, he's this is a guy, listen, he had himself a pretty good year, this past year. He's been very solid since going to the Dodgers, right? Take a look at the numbers here. I mean, go back. After he went to the Dodgers, he pitched in 39 games back in 2023, had an ERA of 0.70, FIP at a 2.48, good strikeout numbers. He was a different man with the Dodgers. Completely different. And this past year, I believe he had a couple of injuries this past year. Only pitched 28 innings overall. But still, solid FIP, solid ERA. This is a guy where it feels like he's kind of gotten himself together. And I think he could end up being a solid guy for a bullpen out there. It's not like, it's not huge, amazing news by any means, but all of a sudden you have a pretty solid reliever available for next year. Let's actually take a look-see at what are the projections here. They're kind of whatever, 3.95 ERA, FIP right around the same, not too much. So, whatever. Still, a guy that could be a serviceable arm in a bullpen. Moving on here. Now, let's get to the juicy stuff. Here. Now, when it comes to Dylan Cease, Mr. Dylan Cease, it's starting to heat up a little bit out there. And according to the New York Post, the Mets are in talks with the Padres about a Dylan Cease trade. We also got a report today from John Morosi that the Cubs are a team to look out for as well. Now, when it comes to the Mets, I think this is interesting here, right? When you take a look at how the Mets have acted towards pitching, right? I was thinking going into the offseason, I thought Corbin Burnes, this guy could be a great addition for this staff. Didn't even go that route. I don't even think the Mets came up once for Corbin Burnes. So that kind of makes me think, okay, they are not very keen to going after some long-term deals, right? They figured it out with Sean Manaea, 3-year deal. Kind of makes me think that, they're more inclined to go after these shorter deals. Sounds like a David Stearns kind of a move, if you ask me. So he's looking at Dylan Cease who could very well be on the market. I mean, I don't see, unless the reports are just completely lying. I mean, to me, the way things are going in San Diego right now, it's looking just very iffy, right? I mean, obviously, stuff going on with ownership, what's going to happen there. Pete Seidler, unfortunately, passing away, not too long ago. Rest in peace. But there's just a lot of issues going on there, right? Hiroki Sasaki, that was their big target this offseason, didn't work out. Nothing has happened with San Diego. There's been more talks about them getting rid of guys, right? They've had questions with their payroll over the last couple of years. Dylan Cease, I have a hard time. I think it's almost 100% chance there's no way he is going to be with the Padres after this year. Even if he ends up staying with the Padres, pitches a full season, I don't see how he stays there. He's a Scott Boras client. He's going to make a ton of money. If they are having issues with money over in San Diego, I mean, there's no way they even offer him an extension. So you might as well move him at this point. It doesn't make any sense to hang on to him. It made sense last year to go after a guy like him because this was a team that was ready to take that step and try to take it to the Dodgers. Unfortunately, in the end, that didn't work out, but at least you went for it, right? Now it makes sense to move him. So, if I'm looking here at the Mets, I think this could be a huge addition, right? Obviously, Sean Manaea, solid guy last year, workhorse kind of a guy, reinvented himself. You brought in Frankie Montas. Let's see what happens with that. All right, when that move happened, that felt like a possible high value kind of a move. Well, let's see how that goes, right? Obviously, they did it with Sean Manaea. They brought him in, and they got him on track and got a great year out of him, and he got himself a 3-year deal out of it. And then Kadai Senga, let's see what the health looks like this year. He came back for the postseason. I would imagine he's going to be okay moving forward. You got Peterson, who looked pretty good last year. You brought in Clay Holmes, but he's been a reliever, right? So who knows how that's going to work out as a starter. You got Paul Blackburn for depth. So Cease right now, he'd be the clear-cut ace of this staff just because, Manaea is like your 2-3, wherever you put him there. He's solid. You don't have to worry about him. Senga, I think just because he missed this entire year, yes, I would say right now Senga is the ace of the staff if fully healthy. But again, just question marks. But with Cease, you bring him in, that's your guy. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball for a little while now. Now, if I'm thinking of, some guys that the Mets could possibly part with. Well, let's actually do this first. What would Dylan Cease's value be? Well, you have to remember here, one win above replacement, you're usually looking at anywhere from like 8 to 9 million, somewhere in that range. It's going to be different for all teams. They have their own values and whatnot, but that's kind of the average we're looking at. So Cease for this coming year, if we were to go take a look-see at Mr. Dylan Cease, he is projected for a 3.5 wins above replacement. He was right at a 5 this past year. So if you're thinking, let's just keep it simple, $8 million per win, right there, you're looking at right around, based off of the projection from Fangraphs, you're looking at right around a $28 million value, right? Add in the track record, that gives you a bit of a bump there. So you're looking at right around, a $33 million value on the median. Then you put in the market, right? Teams bidding. It's going to up it a little bit. There's going to be competition. You're going to be having to give up a lot for Dylan Cease for 1 year. Yes, it's a rental, but you're going to have to give up a lot for him because you're going to get good production out of him. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball, right? Now, when it comes to the Mets, now I'm thinking of this, right? Because you got to think here. If you're going for Dylan Cease and you're only going to get him for 1 year, Tomahawk Chop, I completely disagree. Cease, I don't think is staying. I do not think he's staying at all. No way. I don't see it. Who knows? Maybe it happens, but to me, the Padres, they got to replenish that farm system a little bit. He's not going to re-sign. There's no way. You gotta move him, in my opinion. Now, if you're looking at some of these prospects for the Mets, in my opinion, if you're giving up prospects for a rental, are you going to be wanting giving up your top talent in the minor league system for 1 year? Will they want to part with Jet Williams? Will they want to part with Brandon Sproat? I've been told that they really like Nolan McLean. Will they want to part with him? You know, I don't know. It kind of just makes me think, from the Mets' point of view, who could they be willing to part with where it would sting, but at least they have some other options where they got insurance policies? For example, if you parted with Luis Angel Acuna, well, you have, Luis Angel Acuna, obviously he plays a lot of infield there. He can play some outfield too. Very speedy guy. But then you have Jet Williams coming up the pipe. So could someone like Acuna be part of a deal? I could maybe see something like that. And you already have Jeff McNeil in the fold at the major league level. You know what I mean? So I wonder if Acuna could be a guy that you send back. Could you maybe work a package around him? Maybe throw in a couple more guys here. If you're looking here, maybe someone like Drew Gilbert. That could be a decent outfielder to send back. I mean, maybe if you don't want to part with Brandon Sproat, I mean, maybe you got to part with Nolan McLean here. Obviously, he looked pretty good this past year, but maybe some kind of a package like this where I'm not saying this package exactly, but you're getting pretty close, in my opinion. Now, if you go back here to the article from John Heyman, it says here, the Mets showed they don't like long-term deals for pitchers when they didn't pursue Max Fried or Corbin Burns. He mentions here Brandon Sproat, Jet Williams, and Luis Angel Acuna. And now, getting back to Jet Williams, like I was saying with Acuna, if you moved him, well, at least you got Williams coming up the pipe. Could this be an opportunity to part with Jet Williams? Because if you move him, well, he's a very talented player. He missed a lot of time this past year. But if you part with him, you do have Acuna, who is major league ready. You got a couple other guys here. You got McNeil, who is ready at the major league, obviously ready at the major league level, right? So Jet Williams, he could be a guy that maybe you part with, and it wouldn't sting too much. And you have some other infielders in here. You got Ronnie Mauricio, who's going to be coming back. You know what I mean? So if there is ever a time to part with a top prospect, maybe it could be Jet Williams. I would say either Williams or Acuna would have to be part of this deal. That's my guess. I have a hard time thinking they're going to trade Brandon Sproat. This guy had an awesome year in the minor leagues last year. He really shot up a lot of boards. I don't see them moving their top pitching prospect for 1 year of Dylan Cease. I even have a hard time thinking they part with McLean, who, showed a lot of good things this past year. I feel like that would be really tough to give up, So then, again, that's where maybe, you could do Jet Williams. Maybe you could throw in someone like Joe Natong in here. That's a name I feel like has been coming up a lot in trade proposals and in mock trades. So if you do Jet Williams, Joe Natong, maybe you're on the right track here if you're the Mets. But again, it depends on, obviously, who are they willing to part with. But again, if you part with Williams, you have some insurance. If you part with Acuna, you also have insurance, right? So it's like a luxury having both of those guys in your system. I could see this happening, possibly. We'll see, though. However, let's get to the Chicago Cubs, like we looked at just a little earlier with John Morosi saying one team to watch is the Chicago Cubs. Now, in this article here, it says the Cubs also are involved, but while their prospect list is ranked higher with highly regarded third base prospect Matt Shaw, understandably off limits in rental deals, the Padres may prefer the Mets list. I thought it was interesting that he brought up Matt Shaw. Kind of makes me think, I don't know. Are they asking for Matt Shaw? I don't think that's a good deal. I do not think that would be a good deal to have Shaw. There's no way. I mean, he's one of the top prospects in all of Major League Baseball. I mean, his value is way higher than Dylan Cease right now. I'm not saying Matt Shaw is the better player. I'm saying just the value of this guy. He's going to be a gamer, man. I'm telling you, if he is in the opening day roster, if he's on the opening day roster for the Cubs, this guy is going to be contributing. I think he's going to be a really good player. I've said this a lot. It reminds me a lot of Dustin Pedroia. Just a guy that's a scrappy player. He's going to be a good hitter, good defender. I like Shaw a lot. I don't see the Cubs parting with him. There's no way. I could see the Mets asking for him, but that would be silly. That would be not good, in my opinion. However, that's where I could see someone like Kevin Alcantara. Right now, Alcantara is blocked in Chicago. Had a cup of coffee, a couple of at-bats this year. I don't see a whole lot of situations, at least as of right now, for Alcantara to be getting playing time with the Cubs. The Padres, they need to get themselves an outfielder. Now, I'm not saying Alcantara, you can just throw him into the opening day lineup. Maybe, he has to get a bit more time in the minors. But that's a guy, he's a top 100 prospect. I could see Alcantara being a pretty solid piece in this kind of a deal. And then if you're the Cubs, you do have someone like a Javier Assad. Now, he's not going to be the ace of your staff by any means, but a guy that could give you some good innings at the back end of the rotation, and he's under a lot of control. Throw in another guy here like Jackson Wiggins. When it comes to Jackson Wiggins, he is the number 9 prospect right now in their system. Maybe you could do Brandon Birdsell. I don't know if they do Cade Horton. I don't see that. I mean, if it's not Kevin Alcantara, maybe you could do Owen Casey. A lot of power upside with him. He does strike out a lot, but maybe they could go that route. Either way, I kind of look at it. I think this is pretty interesting. If you're looking at what the Cubs and the Mets could offer, if the Padres would want Kevin Alcantara, I think that could make a lot of sense. Throw some prospects along with him, and I think you could get yourself a deal done. I just also wonder, how far are the Mets willing to go in terms of offering a package? If they're willing to offer Jet Williams, I totally could see them getting a deal done. That's what I wonder about. The more I do these kind of thinking about mock trades, you always have to think of both teams, right? And what both teams would be willing to offer. And the more I do it, the more I see how these trades happen, a lot of the times you tend to see teams are willing to give up the guys that if they give them up, they have other players in their system that can kind of make up for it, right? To where it would hurt to lose that player, but it wouldn't be a death blow by any means, So that's where I think with the Mets, could Jet Williams be expendable to help you land an ace of your staff? And the same thing with the Cubs. You look at Kevin Alcantara. That's a guy right now, he's, like I said, he's blocked. So would it really hurt the Cubs? He's a good player, good prospect. There's a lot of upside with him. But if the Cubs gave him up, would it be a death blow? I don't think it would. So that's kind of the way I'm starting to think, when it comes to making trade proposals and mock trades, because you get people getting grumpy at you all the time. So I'm trying to make as little people, as less people mad as possible, right? So that's kind of the way I like to look at it. So in the end, though, I think it's going to be interesting with Cease. I do think he is going to get moved. I think there's no reason to hang on to him. I think you do the same approach like the Padres did with Juan Soto, sending him to the Yankees, like the Red Sox did with Mookie Betts, sending him to the Dodgers, Kyle Tucker going to the Cubs. That's kind of the route I think the Padres need to take. If you feel like you're not going to be able to sign this guy long term, there is no reason to hang on to him. If you can get some cost-controlled major league talent along with some prospects, then it can be worth it. Can absolutely be worth it. Honestly, and look out for the Padres last year. If you want a team where you saw that kind of a trade worked out for them, look no further than the Padres themselves. They traded Juan Soto. They got Michael King. back in the deal. Obviously, he's up for, a possible trade now too, but still, I think the Padres did fine in that deal, and Juan Soto ended up going to the Mets, right? So he's not even with the Yankees. So for the Padres, I think if they do a similar deal like that, that could be good for them. If you were to ask me which team do I think is more likely, I don't know. I always have this thing. I feel like this is probably just in my head. I feel like more often than not, you tend to see when an organization trades away someone, I feel like more often than not, that guy does not go back. It could happen, right? Jeff Hoffman just went back to the Blue Jays. But could Dylan Cease go back to the Cubs? We'll see. But I think right now the Mets, they might have the stronger offer if they are willing to part with Jet Williams, or if they could figure out a package with Acuna. And with Acuna, you're going to have to give more along with him. With Williams, he's such a high-ranking prospect right now. You wouldn't have to give, in my opinion, you wouldn't have to give up too much else with him. So that's where it's going to get interesting. So if I'm thinking of some other teams that could maybe make a play, that could kind of come out of the shadows, I think the Rangers could be interesting. I really like the idea of the Rangers for Cease. They did go after him last offseason as well. They got some young pitching they could possibly send back. I don't think they're going to send back Kumar Rocker, but could you send back Cody Bradford? Maybe Jack Leiter, possibly. They got some prospects there. I think you could see something. Maybe the Tigers. I think the Tigers would be awesome. I think the Tigers would be a good landing spot for either Dylan Cease or Michael King. I think one of those guys with Scooble, I think that makes a ton of sense, man. That would be awesome. I would love for the Tigers to make a move like that for either of those guys. Baltimore, I feel like they just always keep coming up when it comes to, these trade talks. And, Baltimore, they did just sign Dylan Carlson. I don't know. All of a sudden, I know Dylan Carlson, he's still trying to figure it out. But could that make Heston Kjerstad available? You could build a package around him, send back some pitching. Maybe you could send back either someone like Chase McDermott. You got Michael Ferret in that system. Got De Leon. Maybe you could do a major league ready pitcher and Dean Kramer. I don't know. Yeah, Fibs. Dylan Carlson is depth, but that's kind of my point, right? Because he's already having a hard time looking for playing time right now. Right now, he is projected to be on the bench. With the outfield, you got Mullins in the center. You got Tyler O'Neill. He's probably going to hop back and forth between, outfield, DH, however they play that. And then you got Colton Cowser. So if Dylan Carlson ends up just working into that mix, then, perhaps Kjerstad could be used to get yourself a big-time pitcher like Dylan Cease or maybe even Michael King. I think Cease would make more sense for this rotation because I feel like you have a lot of 2s and 3s right now. Like Zach Eflin in my head is a 2, maybe even a 3, right? Grayson Rodriguez, you still need him to take that step. Charlie Morton, he's the veteran guy. He's going to be the mid to back end rotation guy at this point. You got depth in Kramer and Sagano. Cease, in my opinion, makes a bit more sense than Michael King because he is that clear-cut, legit ace of the staff, right? Where Michael King, I'd say Michael King is more of a 2. Cease, he's the ace, and I think that would make more sense. And I could see Michael King for the Tigers. I think that would be really good. You'd have Scooble at the 1 and then King at the 2. So either way, I think both these guys could end up getting moved, but we'll just have to wait and see. But everyone, I'm going to wrap it up right there. I do want to say thank you for coming out tonight. We had right around 400 people the entire time. Good show tonight, to be honest. I was thinking at one point we weren't even going to have a show at some point, or we weren't going to have a show tonight. I'm also very tired. If it feels like my brain is not working, well, that's why. I'm very tired today. But everyone, I did just post a video. I've actually posted a video back-to-back days. I did one yesterday on the Padres. I had a lot of grumpy Padres fans in the comments saying that I'm doing clickbait and stuff like that because I came up with a couple of ideas for Fernando Tatis Jr. I'm thinking, what in the heck? Do you even know what clickbait means? What are we talking about? But go check that out. I came up with like a fire sale concept for the Padres, came up with some different trade ideas for Luis Ariz, Robert Suarez, Michael King, Dylan Cease. And yes, I even came up with a couple of ideas for Fernando Tatis Jr. I don't think he gets moved. Just pointing that out. We're just having fun, but I guess people, they don't want to have fun. I know Padres fans are not having that much fun. But go check out that video. I put that yesterday. And then I reacted to some Bleacher Report trades this afternoon. Just posted that a few hours ago. Go check that out. But everyone, thank you for coming by tonight. Do appreciate it. All the familiar faces. We got Phibbs. We got Panda. We got Morgan in here. We got Steve. We got Carter Hawkins. We got Lane in here. Thank you for coming by tonight, everybody. Do appreciate that. Go have yourself a good rest of your night. If anything happens tomorrow, I'll be here. Saturday, I'll be here. Sunday, I usually do go live on Sundays. But I do expect some, maybe, I would say at least one video over the next couple of days. Maybe two. We'll see how it goes. But everyone, I'm out of here. Thank you so much for stopping by. And I'll talk to you next time.